Hi card makers, I'm Trisha Morris at Club Scrap with the beautiful Sprouts collection. We're going to be making 12 gorgeous cards during the course of this video. I've got my card kit right here from the Sprouts collection. Of course, my Fiskars guillotine trimmer that we carry here at Club Scrap because I highly recommend it for your success with my method. And then I'm also using the accordion pocket file that I've developed to help us stay organized during our trimming process. Now, if you don't have this accordion pocket file, just let us know. We can help you get a starter kit, and I have a video tutorial to help you make one. Otherwise, just maintain 4 piles instead of 4 pockets. 3 piles, A, B, and C will be for the cards, and then the pile D is used for discarded items that have potential use in our finished cards. So there is a very methodical process to doing this that makes it extremely efficient that I'm excited to share with you, especially if you're brand new to Club Scrap. And then with the instructions, you can either view these on our website, or if you purchase the kit, a link was likely sent your way through email. Otherwise, just follow along on your screen or directly with me, and we will get a lot done in the next hour or so. So with my kit, I'm going to take all of the goodies that were included. That's the ribbon, this awesome washi tape, and then a whole bunch of other little embellishments. I'm going to set those aside so they don't get lost. And we're just going to be working with the paper initially to prepare everything we need for the full 12 cards all at the same time. So that begins with sorting the paper into the order we'll be using it. So the first piece I want you to find is a dark green plain paper. Now when I sort, I tend to hold the paper up in my arm off of my work surface so I can see a lot better from the top edges what I'm looking for. So again, the dark green, and then I want you to find an ivory plain, just one of them. There should be 2 of each color in your kit. Next, I want you to find, probably at the top of your stack, is one of the prints that we've included. And I want you to put that face down on your work surface on that stack we've already started. Actually, I'm going to have you grab the second print as well. We'll be trimming both of those. Well, we're trimming everything, basically, in this kit. Okay, the next, light green is listed, just one of those. One purple. One yellow. And the remaining ivory plain. So just make sure that it's plain on both sides. Then the next, light green, dark green, purple. It goes faster when we get to the end. Yellow. And then finally, we have 2 cut aparts that we're going to be trimming. So the first one, let's see, that one should be the one with 4 larger elements, including the one that says Happy Birthday, Dear Friend. And then the last one, we'll put both of those face down on our work surface and then flip everything back over again so that the first paper I called out, which is the dark green, will be on the top of the pile. Okay, so now I am back on page 1 of my instructions, and we'll follow along with these documents, 1 piece of paper or sometimes 2 at a time. So I think for this first one, we're going to first determine the grain direction of this dark green paper. And you can never really tell the grain by looking at a sheet. You have to do a little test. So hold the paper by the center of one edge and like wiggle it a little bit and study the behavior of the paper. If it's very loose, that's what we're looking for to find the direction of our grain. Then rotate 1 turn. Ooh, this was really nice and flexible. So now I know that the grain is running this way. It's actually, the grain's going this way, and eventually we're going to fold the paper in this direction. So what I want you to do is place it in the trimmer so that it dips easily from left to right. The future fold of that paper will be left to right, and that's how we prevent those nasty crumpled looking folds. All right, our first cut now is at 8.5 inches, and just to review, make sure your paper is flush with the top edge of your trimmer right here, this ridge, so that it's at a 90-degree angle with the blade. Then use the vertical columns to find our 1/4 inches. So 8, 8 1/4, 8.5. Here we are. Stabilize on that clear bar and slice. Okay, so now rotate this 8.5 by 12. We'll trim horizontally at 11 and 5.5. Then take these 2 5.5 by 8.5, set them aside to be scored. So I'm just going to literally put those on top of my score pal. And then this next strip, we're going to trim at 8 1/4 and just pop this little paper into pocket B. or pile B. Then the next piece we'll trim at 9.5 and 4 3/4. And then both of these go in pocket A, the two rectangles that are the same. And then you have this other little guy. This is a scrap I'm just going to add to pocket D for now. And then, of course, there is a tiny little scrap that you can just dispose of. We're going to repeat all of that with the ivory. I should have done that. I planned to do it. I got all excited about the grain direction. The ivory and the dark green could be trimmed at the same time, but now we have got a good warm-up done here. So I'm going to make sure the paper dips easiest from left to right. That curve should be left to right. And we'll repeat. So 8.5. Rotate and trim at 11. And 5.5. Stack up the two card bases that we just made and place them on a separate pile to be scored. This thin strip will trim at 8 1/4. Pocket B. And then this last piece, 9.5, 4 3/4. Take both of the rectangles that are the same. Those go in pocket A, and then this is pocket D for I didn't use it quite yet. You may or may not eventually use it. Now, take just one of this print, and it doesn't matter where the grain direction is because the paper will not be folded. And I'll trim at 11 3/4 and 7 1/4. Then rotate, and we'll cut at 10, 7.5, 5, and 2.5. All right, if we grab up all of the little strips we just created, you'll notice one of them is smaller than the other. So the smallest or narrowest strip, that will go in pocket D, and then the other 4 larger ones go in pocket B. Then take the remaining larger piece here, we'll trim horizontally at 10, 8, 6, and 4. Now this technically is a scrap. I believe I do use it a little bit later, but for now I'll put it in pocket D. We know where to find it. And then we've got 4 rectangles of the same size going in pocket C. And then this narrow strip also can go in pocket D. Now I'm moving on to page 2 of our instructions. We're at step 3. This is the other print trimming instructions. So we got a nice easy cut here. We'll trim at 8. Grain direction doesn't matter, no folding in the future. And then 4. All right, so I want you to take 2 of the 4x12s we just made. We're going to trim those at the same time at 10.5 and 5 1/4. So you just made 4 panels. All 4 of these are used in set A. And then you do have 2 little scrappies for pocket D. And let's pick up this next strip. We're going to trim horizontally at 11, 8 1/4, 5.5, 2 3/4. Take all of the same sized pieces and place them in pocket A. And then this is a little scrap for the D pile. And I forgot to mention that if I'm going too fast for you, if you're just starting out, go ahead and adjust the speed by pushing on the gear button on the lower right corner of your YouTube channel screen, and then just adjust the playback speed to something slower like 0.75. As you practice and work at this and refine your skill, you will get faster and faster, I promise. Okay, so now the next piece to trim is this light green color. I'm checking the grain direction and making sure the paper dips most easily from the left to the right. And I'm going to take the purple sheet as well, double check my grain, and I can definitely tell this is dipping easily. And in the future, we'll be scoring and folding the paper in that same direction. Okay, so the first trim on both of these sheets is at 10 1/4. And then slide it down to 7. Then rotate and cut at 10 3/4 and 8 1/2. Okay, so this is going to end up being 2 card bases. I'm going to set these aside with my cards to be scored, and then I'm going to take the next wider rectangle that we created and trim this horizontally at 6 3/4 4.5, and 2.25. I just made a whole bunch of squares. So all of these little squares will go in pocket B, and then we did make two little tiny scraps. Here's the light green one over here, sneaking out of my sight. Okay, and then this piece, this longer strip, you can place them both in pocket D, and then grab the next strip. These are, this is a 3.25 by 12, and we'll trim at 8.25. It's 8.25. These are panels. So the large panels go in pocket B, and then the smaller rectangle, pocket C. Then you have this long strip. We're going to trim this one horizontally at 8.75. Believe it or not, this is the scrap. And then this guy goes in pocket C. The small piece is the one we want to use. We're going to do that again, this time with yellow. So check your green direction, dipping left to right, and ivory, dipping easily left to right. Okay, let's repeat all of this. 10.25 and 7. Rotate. 10.75 and then 8.5. And we just made two more card bases. Put those aside, and we're going to trim some squares from this next strip here. So again, 6.75, 4.5, 2.25. Gather up all of these squares, pocket B, and then find your, if you want, you don't even have to try to find them. You can dispose of those tiny little rectangles. Then we have the strip. We'll save it because it's nice and large. We probably will use it from pocket D, and then take the long skinny-ish, and cut it 8.25 to make some panels for card set B. B as in boy. And then the rectangles go in C. And then this last strip, we'll trim at 8.75. And then this goes in pocket D for didn't use it quite yet. And then the little guy in C. So we're finished with that diagram. Now we're moving on. We're 4 colors need to be trimmed this way. And so there's great efficiency in these formulas, and it's going to be easy for you to use these again and again with paper from your stash. Again, I'm testing the grain direction to dip easily from the left to the right. That's pretty stiff. That's nice and droopy. So light green and dark green. Our first cut is at a really big number to make a really tiny piece. So we'll trim at 11.75 and 7. Then I want you to rotate, and we'll cut at 10 and 5. Okay, these two 5x7s, set those aside to be scored. The other two 5x7s can go directly into the pocket labeled C. And from this strip, we're going to trim some squares on even numbers. This is nice and easy. We'll cut at 6, 4, and 2. Stack up all the squares. Those will go in pocket B with the other squares. And we do have some scraps. Then on the remaining larger strip, this is 4.75 by 12, we are going to make a cut at a very big number again, 11.75 and 11.5, then 10, 8.5, 6.25, and 4. Phew, that was quite a few cuts from one piece. Now this is really cool what just happened. You made a larger panel, then you made 2 sets that are the same size, 2 more sets that are the same size, and then 2 more sets. Believe it or not, we're using these little guys. And let me just give you a peek of where we're headed. This is the A7 card, which is like a bay window type structure. See this? And if you study this, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 panels on the outside, and then there's another panel on the inside. And see these little guys? That's what we just created in all of those cuts. So every cut has a purpose here, and we're going to take all of these and put them in pocket C. Okay, we need to repeat that process. Oh, by the way, we do have some stringies here. I'm going to put those in D at the end, and we're going to repeat. So check the grain direction with the purple, dipping left to right, dipping left to right. And you can use this formula to make more bay window cards quite easily. Okay, so we'll trim at 11 3/4 and 7. Rotate and cut at 10 and 5. Once again, this 5x7 goes into the score pile, and the other pair of 5x7s will be the base of our card, and that goes directly in pocket C. Let's trim some squares from this strip here. So we'll trim again on the evens. That's 6, 4, and 2. All the squares going into pocket B for our slimline cards. And then we have the little scrappies. Now pick up the larger strips here. And we'll start out again with that big number, 11 3/4. 11 1/2, 10, 8 1/2, 6 1/4, and 4. There's a lot of math involved when I was designing this card, and the 5x7 size gave me the nicest measurements, so that's why I sort of redesigned this card structure to be a little larger. Now, again, all of these panels are going into pocket C. Got a lot in there. And then we have the 2 thin strips going into D. We've made it to the cut aparts. So all of the card structures have been trimmed. Now, if you are a stamper, go ahead and trim these cut aparts, and then guess what? Free and included with every kit is a plain side. So if you don't want to use these sentiments, or if you want to stamp on your own, by trimming these cut aparts, you are preparing all of your stamp surfaces to perfectly fit all of the cards. To prep this properly, we'll need to remove the outer perimeter of the entire sheet. So just take a look at this little guide. You're going to find it on each corner of this entire sheet. And then I'm going to trim around the whole perimeter here. So I'm carefully aligning that little mark with the edge of my blade. And once I cut that properly, I'll rotate and then repeat for the other end, just aligning at the top and bottom as best as I possibly can to remove that edge. I rotate a 3rd time. And the 3rd rotation, you should be able to line this up with the number 12 on that other end. And then a final rotation. Again, cutting at 12 inches should round things out nicely. Okay, then I can take all of these little scrappies and throw those out. When we begin trimming, we'll have the thinking of you on the right, and we'll cut at 10, 8, and 4. Now, if you want, you can take these 2 4-inch strips, rotate them, and trim horizontally at 10 1/2 and 5 1/4. These are actually the innies for all of card set A. They're nice and big, which is kind of fun. Then you do have 2 little scrappies that you can use on the inside of your cards later on. You have 2 more strips that are the same size. They can be trimmed horizontally at 6. I'm doing those at the same time. And stack them up and place them in pocket B. That's it for that first sheet of cut aparts. How handy is that? We're going to do the same thing with this. I'll remove the outer perimeter. About 1/8 of an inch is coming off of each edge. Now let's return to the spot where this long skinny strip is on the end, and we will trim at 11 1/2, 10, making sure that the blade always goes through the gap, the gutter between the pieces of art, and then 8 1/2, 6 7, and 3.5. So take this first 3.5 that's still in the trimmer, we'll rotate it so it's horizontal. I'll cut at 9, 6 3/4, 4.5, 2 1/4. Okay. Now, there's a series of all the same size pieces. Those go in pocket A, and then a larger one goes in D. The next strip, we're going to trim just into even pieces. So 9, 6, and 3. All of these will be used in pocket C. Our next strip, again, same cuts, 9, 6, and 3. These are also used in card set C. Now we're going to make a whole bunch of squares, and we have a little scrap on this end, which is kind of handy. So these squares are going to be used on that slimline card, and the squares are 1.5 inches. So our first cut is at 10.5, then 9, 7.5, 6, 4.5, and 3. So we have a little extra piece that goes in pocket D, and all these adorable little squares, guess where? Pocket B for our slimline. We'll repeat that for this next piece here. So again, 1.5 inch square. So that puts us at 10.5, 9, 7.5, 6, 4.5, 3, and pocket D, this guy. All the other squares, pocket B. This strip can be used anywhere, so I'm throwing that in pocket D. And here everything has been trimmed, the whole entire kit. I'll set my trimmer aside and grab that score pal. Make sure, especially if you're working at the edge of a table, that you support your accordion pocket file before removing your trimmer so it doesn't fall on the floor. I've sorted my set aside papers in order from smallest to largest. So let's go ahead and start with that smallest piece. We have quite a few scores to add to this. And I'm using a ball tip stylus. After many, many years of scoring, I did find that I prefer this to any other tool, actually, for getting a nice score line with this score pal. So our numbers here for scoring are 1/2 and 6.5. Then I want you to flip this from the bottom to the top. It's not a rotation, it's a flip. And we'll score at 2 1/4 and 4 3/4. So you can set that aside, we'll repeat. So 1/2 and 6.5. Flip, bottom comes up to the top, 2 1/4, 4 3/4. Repeat that for the remaining 2 pieces. All of these scored pieces are used in card set C. That's kind of our special card of the month. Now I have a series of 5.5 by 8.5. Scoring this is even optional because we did trim it so that we would be folding with the grain. But if you were scoring, it would be at 4 1/4. So this goes in horizontally. And at the asterisk, which is, it's just such a common scoring measurement. That's why it has a special marking. Another option with this type of card is just to simply put it vertically into the score pal and bring the bottom to the top and then press to crease. You can varnish that crease later with the bone folder. So you have those 2 options. I'm just going to go ahead and score these at 4 1/4 just to give me a nice crisp fold. All of these card bases are used in set A. Lastly, we have the slimline cards. Now, these are tricky because the paper is almost square. So when you put this in the score pal, make sure that the reading is 7. So this paper's in here vertically. There's the 8.5 and the 7, and we'll score at 3.5. Again, double check to make sure that up here it's 7. Score at 3.5. And repeat for the remaining 2 pieces, scoring at 3.5. These are used in card set B, and that's the final prep step before we tackle each individual card style. I've taken everything out of pocket A, and I've sorted all of the panels and pieces in order by size from largest to smallest. And then you can also fold your card bases in half. An important tip is that if you've scored, the bump of the score goes on the inside of the fold. And I always just say, to help you remember, bury the bump. So the B's go together. Bury that bump inside of the folds. And it's just a good way to remember. Now I'm looking at page 3 of my instructions, and I'm going to try to recreate the cards by dealing out the colors as shown in the instructions. So I'm going to have a horizontal ivory and a horizontal green, then a vertical green and a vertical ivory card base. I'll just make sure to give that another crease. Okay, so these are the bases for our 4 cards. Next, I'll take all of those pieces I sorted out, and the largest panel is going to be placed on the top of each individual card base. Pretty. I like this. Okay, then we have a medium-sized panel to distribute. So the green, dark green goes here, and ivory will go here. And this creates some color contrast. So you can see I'm alternating the colors that I'm sorting through here. And then I'll go ivory on this one and dark green on this one. Next, I have these smaller printed panels, so I'll distribute these again, one to each card, and then we have our sentiments. So this is an annual reminder. We have our horizontal sentiments, and then we have our vertical sentiments. I forgive you for being younger than me. Okay, then for the innies, I've got, let's see, if I could turn back time, this green one, this goes down on the vertical card, and the purple matches with purple. And the same thing here with the horizontal. Happy birthday, dear friend. You can go purple, green, or you can alternate however you want to distribute these. Totally up to you. All right, all of these cards are assembled in essentially the same basic way. So let's just assemble one card together, and you can see how easy it is. I'll begin, if I can, I'll just take this large piece, get it out of the way. I usually don't attach the inner sentiments until I have something on the front, just in case I accidentally flip the card around, but I think we'll be all right. Happy birthday. Look at that, just fits perfectly on the inside of the card. Looks great. Absolutely love that. Now, it's important, like if you're adding ribbon to any of the layers, that you do that in advance of adhering things. So just study each card individually to make sure ribbon attachment doesn't need to be addressed before you start nesting layers. And as with our planning, everything worked out, and this nests onto the card base with a perfect border all the way around. I think this is a wonderful step up in your professional feel of your card makings to ensure that that things, the layers have even margins. It always just looks so much better. All right, then I will nest this. Now, in my original sample, I did run this panel through an embossing machine with a texture folder that had some leaves on it, so you might want to think about kicking it up a notch by doing that. I'm just going to grab everything out of pocket D, so I have all of those options in front of me. And I'm going to see if there is a light green strip here. Yes, there is. And I'm going to go ahead and trim that to 5 1/4. Now that is the same width as my printed panel on the base, and it gives me a little anchor to add some of this adorable gingham ribbon. So I'm going to take the ribbon and just tie it around one end with a double knot. And then trim the tails with a nice scissors. I keep one exclusively for fabric. If I try to use my paper scissors with ribbon, sometimes it just frays it. Okay, then I'll take some adhesive. So again, this layer is really optional, but I think it just adds something. It's a great way to use those leftovers. I'm going to go at about an inch from the bottom edge. Notice I'm using my ruler to help me keep this panel from being crooked when I attach it. Next, I was supposed to add this layer before. Doesn't matter. It looks really great. Now we'll add our printed layer. Different order, same result. Looks great. Okay. Then this piece I'm going to attach kind of at an angle, and I'll use some foam adhesive circles. I like to make my foam circles go a long way, so I just cut them in half. And you can apply them. I'm leaving the sides open so I can tuck in some of those really adorable gold leaves. So just angle this on there. Isn't that sweet? Okay, so for embellishments, we do have these adorable matte gold leaves. So if you use a half of a piece of the foam, I think it's going to be the right size. If not, we can just trim that down a hair. That's pretty good. Just peel off the backing, and let's tuck that kind of back in there. Oh, so lovely. How's that for a super easy way to embellish a card? Just tuck those behind there. That way you're kind of hiding one of the holes. If there's any foam peeking out, you can disguise that as well. What a sweet card. This is an annual reminder that I am super glad you were born. Happy birthday, dear friend. Done and done. Beautiful card. The remaining cards in this set are assembled basically in the same way. So you can see my original, I just changed the order, but do you see that texture folder? That embossing added quite a bit to this finished card. I did the same thing with the ivory panel on the next card, the same basic assembly, even with the foam adhesive and everything. The only difference on this one is that I added a scrap, just like one of these little bitty strips. It's a 1/4 inch by 12 inch starts out, and I just trimmed it to 4 inches wide and attached it to this card. And again, just with the texture and a stapled piece of folded ribbon at the top. It kind of gives it more of a tag feel. Same thing on this one. I found the yellow and trimmed that, the yellow scrap, trimmed it to go with this, and added the washi tape to the edge before I attached it. And then I just kind of centered things a little bit differently on this one. I really do like that. And then finished it with a stapled ribbon attached with foam adhesive again. So that is set A, super easy. What I'm going to do is take all of the parts and pieces I've sorted out here, along with my finished sample, and plop this into one of the envelopes that came in my kit so I can keep everything together while we move on to the next set. Now, before we begin with set B, I want you to do a little bit of preparation. Number one, go ahead and fold all of the card bases by burying the bump. Then sort all of the pieces that you have in the pocket in order by size from largest to smallest. And then also sort out your piles of squares by color. So you should have 3 yellow, 3 light green, 3 ivory, and 3 purple larger squares. 3 yellow, 3 light green, 3 purple, 3 dark green, smaller squares. So if you keep all of this organized ahead of time, then the assembly is going to go a little bit more smoothly. Okay, so we have 2 vertical and 2 horizontal. So our first vertical card base is going to be ivory, and then we'll use light green. And then for the horizontal, let's see, how should we lay this out? How about like this? Horizontal will have yellow and then purple. Okay, then we have some nesting panels with color. So the next largest pieces we'll sort out and exchange the colors as we go. So light green, yellow, purple, and ivory. There's no wrong answer to doing this. It's just that I've put in the time to kind of figure out what goes best where. But if you follow that or don't, it does not matter. Just assemble the card how you like it. Then I'm going to distribute one of these prints to each card. Then I'm going to use the green strip with this vertical and the ivory strip with this one. From my scrap pile, I also found that this little green strip kind of added the 4th color to this, and then a little purple strip. Oh, I love it. Oh no, actually I used dark green because the purple was used earlier, so I used dark green to add another color to this one as well. So those you can just trim to fit the width of that larger panel. I hope that's not confusing to you. Now the inside of each of these cards is still in my hand. So for the vertical, so very sorry for your loss is this first one, and then just one more plant, and then thinking of you and remember you can be. Okay, so that's the innie. What's left now are those squares. We'll start out with the largest pile of squares. And on the first vertical card, we'll add the 3 yellow, 3 dark purple, 3 ivory, and 3 light green. Then a second layer of squares in contrasting colors. So I went with purple on this one, and they fit perfectly. Isn't that cool? Then dark green, light green, and yellow. Finally, we have the artwork. So I've got a yellow plant, a purple plant, and then a light green sprout here. And we'll kind of repeat that for the second vertical card set. Again, these can be distributed any way you like. Then we have Don't Worry with the bunny and the Be Happy. And then finally a little sprout, a happy birthday, and a little sprout. That was everything from the pocket plus a few from our scrap pile. So let's just do, as usual, one card together. The rest should fall into place very easily with the same exact type of steps. Just the only difference is the thin strip versus the thick strip. And you can incorporate those scraps any way you like. Again, there's no wrong answer. Okay, so here we go. We've got our card base, and I think we can safely add our light green panel to this. So just center that carefully. It's such a long, these slimline cards are so long. Now, here I have a panel that I want to make sure is centered, and my ruler is a little short. So I'm going to come in with the big guy. This is my 3x14 grid ruler, and I'm just going to go ahead and check what I did on this one with my 0 center to find out. We're 3/8 from the long edge and a 1/2 inch from the short edge. Okay, so 3/8, that's 3 squares from the long edge of the green panel, and then 4 from the short edge. Now I know it's centered, and if you're like, Trisha, I really don't care if it's centered or not, that's absolutely fine. Just eyeball it. I just like to make sure that this is nice and straight. Beautiful. With slimline cards, it's a little harder to get everything leveled because it's such a big area. It's hard for the eye to perfectly see what's going on there. Now I have this dark green strip, so I'm going to take my washi tape and run it across the middle of the strip. And you can incorporate the washi tape even more than what I did. I do recommend too that you keep the washi tape with the card set, and then as you're mailing it, you can add washi tape to the outside of the envelope just to kind of add a little bit of a nice effect. So I just wrapped those ends around to the back, and now I'm going to attach them. I do want to make sure it's nice and level. So again, I'll just use the ruler to help with that. Okay. Finally, we have these cleverly nesting squares. So you'll find out, I mean, it's just such a nice, ideal fit. I love how this formula creates these layers of color for every single card we assemble. Look at that spacing. It's so nice. So I'm just going to apply the adhesive, and I think I can eyeball this. The spacing should be the same, the bottom left and right, and then top left and right, and then you can line this up and center. Beautiful. Same for the next layer of purple. Before we attach these, we're going to do a little something special. I'm going to take this really gorgeous taffeta purple ribbon, and I'm going to trim like 3 pieces of the same length. It's so cool watching Deb trim ribbon from these big giant rolls into the long pieces, and when it's taffeta, it makes this really cool sound. I don't know, it's the little things, right? So I'm taking this ribbon, folding it in half to make a loop, and then add the loop to the top of the square so that a little bit peeks out, and then use tape to secure the loop at the top. Repeat that for the other 2 squares. A small tip is that I have uneven lengths of the ribbon on the back side, so when I tape it, both layers of the ribbon are secure. Lastly, I will splice a couple of foam adhesive circles, and I'll add that to the back of each one of these squares. And then I always keep a little tweezers handy, and it's just kind of a really quick and easy way to remove the tab. I love that the tabs of this adhesive are easy. I just can't stand spending time trying to find an edge. And that's what these foam adhesive circles do, is they just provide that nice little tab to remove the back. Oh, that's such a beautiful card. I love this. Now on the inside, here's an option. If I'm just reaching into my pile of scraps, I do have this nice long print, and I do have this nice long sentiment. So I'm going to go ahead and just take this pretty little print here and layer it into my card, and then finish with the inner sentiment. Oh, yeah, it's the same width. I'll just offset it a little bit. Very lovely. Plenty of room still to write on the other side with this ivory card base, and that is a gorgeous card. Let's take a look at the remaining cards in the set. Here is the one we made together, and then the mate. You can see again the use of the tape and all those beautiful layers. Change the order if you like. I use the same ribbon trick and the foam adhesive. On the horizontal cards, I just had that skinny little strip. You could do that with the washi tape as well. However you want to incorporate the remaining items. You can see on the inside I added this. What did I do on the inside of this one? Oh, just that little printed piece. Doesn't that add a lot? I just love incorporating those leftovers because they're really not leftovers. They really have a home. And then the happy birthday is the remaining card. I did this with the yellow ribbon, and I thought that was very sweet as well. Remember, you can be anything you want to be, except younger. Okay, let's move on to that final set of cards. I'm so excited to teach you this bay window card. I did take a few minutes when I paused the video to organize what came out of Pocket C. There's a lot in there, and I sorted everything again in piles by size, and there's this whole series of piles, and I sorted them with the colors together in of course, by size for these. And then you have like sentiments and panels for the sentiments. Those are in a separate pile, and my little strips plus my card bases and my scored pieces. So that, just take that 5 minutes and do that. Pause me if needed, and then let's dive in and sort out our card bases to start. So with the 4 cards, we're going to take a non-scored 5x7 piece and lay that out first. So we have our purple card base for number 1. Then we have the yellow, a dark green, and a light green. So those would be the card bases. Can you alter these colors? Absolutely. Do whatever you want. This is just a guideline. Now you have the matching scored piece going in with each card base. Can you vary that? Of course. Whatever you want to do with your colors is totally up to you. For these scored pieces, we're going to go into our thin strips and find matching pieces for the sides, and all of these separate scored areas get a little strip that will fit within it. So you'll see that there is a wide and then 2 narrow and then 2 really skinny. These little guys are optional, but I think that they do a nice job of identifying all the cool functionality of the card. In addition to the green one in the center, the light green, we're going to nest it with this. And then for the inside of the card, we're going to go to another larger green that will fit in there. And then a medium-sized, from our strips here, there's going to be a yellow panel that will also fit on the inside. We'll go back and add the sentiments in a moment. Then, and the next, on the yellow card, I'm going to contrast everything by putting the dark green onto the scored areas. So let's find our wide dark green here, and then 2 narrower dark greens, the skinniest dark greens, and then the printed panel in the middle. Yellow is my color to go onto the dark green just to brighten things up a little bit. So the two yellows, the skinnies, and then these guys, and the medium one in the middle, and the print. I'll go back and add those innies like I did before. Of course, purple is going to go on to the light green. And the print. Now on the inside of this one, I'm going to take the remaining larger purple. We'll do the remaining green and the light green and the remaining dark green. And then on this side, we'll put the dark green and the yellow and the purple. Now I'm going to my sentiment pile. Let's take the yellow and Don't Let Getting Older Bug You. Then we'll take a light green, smaller nesting panel along with Happy Birthday. So Don't Let Getting Older Bug You with Happy Birthday nested on green. For this next sentiment, I'll take the purple along with Everybody Needs Somebody. Sometimes. That's so sweet. And then how about the ivory panel with Thinking of You. We're almost there. Hang in there with me. How about a light green? It's a lot of pieces, but it'll all make sense shortly. Along with Don't Stop Believing. Then yellow with I'm Rooting for You. Finally, we'll do ivory with this Don't Forget to Water Your Dreams, and then purple with You Grow Girl. Wow, that's a lot. Now each one of these cards will also receive one of these really adorable silver leaf charms to finish them off. Let's make this one together. So I'll stack up the remainder of the cards neatly and set these aside. The hardest part is over. All that sorting and intermingling of the colors, I think, is what is the most challenging. So that's done. This is now the easy part. Remember when we scored these panels, we flipped? So you have the raised bump on one side and then raised bumps on the other, and that's to help you choose the proper way to fold. So I'm going to bury the bump of this and just make a crease, and the same on the other side. And then I will reverse fold to bury the bumps on the other side for this one. And that's what really just sets us up for that bay window structure. It's naturally going to want to fold in that direction. Now I can take this tab right here, and I'm going to choose to use my bookbinding glue in a needle tip applicator so that I have time to adjust this when I attach it to my card base. So this 1/2 inch flap, don't glue both of them, just one of them, gets attached to the edge of the 5x7 non-scored card base. So even if you're exchanging or mixing up all the colors, either way, this gets attached to the edge. The fact that I'm working with a wet glue allows me to make it so it's perfect, even if I didn't land perfectly. So there's the basic structure of the card, right? That was not so hard. And if you just want to flatten things out again to make it easy, I will take the same glue and run it along these tiny little pieces, because it's just such a tiny piece. It's way easier to attach with glue, and again, you can move it around a little bit to get that accurate placement. And we'll do the same on the other tab. Again, these are optional, but I just liked the contrast. We had the paper. It mathematically worked out perfectly. Okay, I'm just going to use my regular ATG to fit the remaining panels for the front of the card within the score lines. So the score lines are what dictate where each piece is placed. The two skinnier ones go on the left and the right of this larger center one. Then we have the print, and that should nest beautifully right into the middle. Now we've got this Don't Let Getting Older Bug You. That nests onto a yellow. For attaching this, you have to be really careful though. Don't let any adhesive get past where these score lines are. So you just want to make sure your adhesive is going across the center of this panel only, so that it can pop up away from the card base when it's on display. That is the outside of the card, completely done. Now open this up, and we're going to be attaching the 2 remaining pieces. So what I typically did was attach this one first so that I could make sure it was placed nicely along the edge with equal margin at the top, the bottom, and the right. Then you can attach the green and just give it a nice little space. And it may mean that you're flush up against this fold line, which I am. Now be getting more careful here as we get to the end. It's an important point with the adhesive again here. This just nests on as it normally would. But before you attach this, 2 things. Works best if you use foam adhesive. So I'm going to go and flip this over and cut myself some halvesies. I got probably enough. And only apply the foam to the middle of this sentiment. If you want, you can use your fingers or just a tweezers to remove the backing. And then we're going to attach this right in the middle. I'm eyeballing everything today. You're like, oh, what's wrong with Trisha? It's early in the day, so maybe my vision's better. Okay, so that's basically all the pieces, right? We just, it's the little charm can still be attached, but we won't worry about that right now. To display the card, it just opens up, and this last tab sneaks behind the foam, and there's your card. How easy was that? Like I said, the hardest part, honestly, was just sorting through the pieces. And now that they're all sorted, we have this really clever structure. And then all you have to do is just tuck that tab in when the card's on display. And then just remove it when the card mails. Now, you know, maybe your recipient won't really know that that's supposed to happen. Maybe send it to your card making friends. I don't know. I think it's pretty clear though. Or you could put a little piece of paper in there that tells them what to do. On my finished sample, I also added some washi tape to the inside. You can do, you know, apply that liberally wherever you like. It's just a fun addition to your cards. And then I just glued the charm onto the front of each of these. I'll show you in my finished samples how these turned out. So this is the one that we did together, and you can see I just took some waxed linen thread from my stash and looped it onto the top of the charm to kind of bring the eye to it a little bit. And then the charms have this really nice textured backing, so the bookbinding glue adheres very, very well to this, and these aren't going anywhere. I did suggest in my sneak preview of this that this is a jewelry grade charm, and I think they would make a beautiful pair of earrings as well. And then there's the inside with the added washi, just kind of adds a little bit. Tuck it in. So nice. Here's the second one. Everybody needs somebody, with thinking of you on the inside. And the key here is just to remember to put your foam adhesive at the center. Here I wrapped the corners with some ribbon. That's just a nice little touch. And then more washi tape on the inside. And finally on this one, wrap the corners with that yellow. And this panel, that is a scrap, you can trim. That's a little bit off of it, or yeah, just a small amount you can trim from it, and it will nest perfectly on there. So this was in pocket D, total option for you, not required, but it just definitely adds a nice touch to the inside of this particular card. Wow, that was set C. That's the final set for our dozen cards. All that's left for you to do now is finish up the remaining samples, and you are good to go. If you liked this Sprouts collection, please pick up the page kit and join me for my page kit tutorial. We'll make 8 beautiful layouts together, and I hope to see you there.